The invitation arrived on a Tuesday. Amara stood at her kitchen counter, still in her work clothes, her handbag not yet set down, and stared at the cream-colored envelope with her name written in gold ink. She already knew what it was. She had been hearing about Jasmine's engagement for 4 months, had admired the ring in photographs, had liked every post, had typed, "So happy for you," with an exclamation point that felt like a small act of courage each time. She opened it anyway. "You are joyfully invited to celebrate the marriage of Jasmine Adeyemi and Kevin Osei." She set it on the counter. Went to change her clothes. Came back. Made tea she did not drink. And then sat at her kitchen table while the evening darkened around her and let herself feel the thing she had been too faithful to feel all day. Loneliness. Not the shallow kind that could be cured by a phone call or a good night out. The deep, grinding kind. The kind that had a name and a history and a face, Marcus, 3 years ago, who had looked her in the eyes and told her she was almost everything he wanted. Almost. She had spent a year after that trying to figure out which part of herself was missing, which part of her had not been enough. She was 29 years old. She loved God genuinely, not performatively. She served in her church. She had built a life she was proud of, a career in public health, an apartment she had decorated with intention, a small circle of friends who were real with her. And still. Her mother called every few weeks with the same gentle, pointed question dressed in different clothes. "Amara, you know Sister Pauline's nephew is still single. He's an engineer now. Very settled. Or, your auntie was asking about you. She just wants to know if there's someone in the picture." Or, worst of all, the silence, the loaded pause after Amara said no, there was no one, a pause that said everything her mother was too kind to say aloud. She was not bitter. She told herself this. She believed in love. She believed it was coming. She had a journal full of prayers, a heart full of hope, and a growing, secret exhaustion that she had never said out loud to anyone, not even to God. That night, she said it to God. She got on her knees beside her bed, not because she thought the position earned her more access, but because she needed her body to agree with what her heart was doing. She needed to be fully in it. "Lord." Her voice came out rough. "I'm tired." She had not planned what came next. It poured. "I'm tired of going to weddings alone. I'm tired of sitting at the singles table and pretending I chose it. I'm tired of watching people who came to faith after me, who I'm not comparing myself to, Lord, I'm not, but they're building families and I'm still here. I'm still in the same place. And I don't understand." She pressed her forehead to her clasped hands. "I know you're good. I know your timing is perfect. I know all the things I'm supposed to know. But right now, in this room, I just need to tell you that this is hard. That I'm lonely. That I've been faithful and I'm not trying to bargain with you. I know that's not how this works, but I need you to know that I'm barely holding the hope together. I'm doing it, but barely." She was crying now. Quietly, the way she cried when no one was watching. "I don't want to grow bitter. I'm scared of growing bitter. I've seen what that does to women. I don't want that. I want to be whole. But I don't know how to be whole and also this lonely. I don't know how to do both at the same time." She stayed there a long time after the words ran out. Just breathing. The apartment was very quiet. And God did not send her a man that night. He did not show her a vision of her future wedding. He did not speak audibly. He did not give her a timeline. What happened was quieter than that, and more difficult to explain. It was more like a loosening, a slow, cellular release of something she had been clenching for years without realizing it. As she knelt there in the dark, something in her chest began, slowly, to unknot. She thought of Marcus. She had not really thought of him in months, but now she let herself look at the memory clearly. She had loved him honestly. He had not been able to receive it. That was not a verdict on her worth, it was simply a mismatch, and she had been punishing herself for it ever since. She had been showing up to her own life with a case against herself, carrying evidence of her insufficiency like a file folder she pulled out whenever things got hard. What if you're not missing anything? The thought arrived without fanfare. Not a voice. Just a thought that felt different from her other thoughts, cleaner, more solid, like something laid down rather than constructed. What if you're not behind? What if this is exactly where I have you? She didn't say amen right away. She sat with it. Tested it. Tried to find the hole in it the way she always did, looking for the place where it couldn't hold. But it held. She thought about eagles. She had heard the passage 100 times, had stitched it on throw pillows in her mind, had heard it preached on Valentine's Sundays when the couples walked in beaming and the singles shifted in their seats. But she had never really let it land. Eagles don't flap to rise. They spread their wings and catch the current, they surrender to something that is already moving, something stronger than their own effort. The mounting up is not about doing more. It is about opening. She got off her knees and sat on the edge of her bed. Wiped her face. Breathed. She was still single. Nothing had changed on the outside. But something had shifted in the interior, in the place where bitterness was starting to build its house. She had caught it before the walls went up. She RSVP'd yes to Jasmine's wedding the next morning. And this time, she meant it. The months that followed were not magical. They were not a montage of self-discovery set to an uplifting score. They were ordinary, sometimes tedious, occasionally hard in new ways. But Amara had made a decision, not to perform contentment, but to pursue it. There was a difference. Performing it looked like smiling in the right moments, saying the right things, projecting peace she didn't feel. Pursuing it looked like staying in the Word when she didn't feel like it. Going to therapy and saying the honest things there. Calling her friend Yutund at 11 at night and saying, I had a hard day and I don't want to spiritualize it. Can you just sit on the phone with me? She attended Jasmine's wedding in June. She wore a dress she loved. She danced at the reception with her whole body, not the careful half-dance of a woman trying not to be seen wanting something. She sat at a table with a mix of couples and singles and did not measure her happiness against theirs. She cried once, in the bathroom, briefly, because the vows were beautiful and she felt the wanting again. But this time the wanting didn't have shame attached to it. It was just longing. Clean longing, without the judgment. She allowed it, washed her face, reapplied her lip gloss, and went back out to the dance floor. That was the year she started writing again. Not prayers, though those continued, but essays, reflections, things she submitted to a faith-based blog she'd followed for years. The editor wrote back within a week. Your voice is extraordinary. Send us more. She did not know it then, but something was being built. Wings were forming in the hidden season. Not visible from the outside. Not observable on a timeline. The kind of becoming that has no announcement. She met Daniel at a conference in the spring. Not in the way that happens in stories, no dramatic eye contact across a crowded room, no immediate knowing. She met him at the coffee station during the morning break, while she was trying to get the lid on her cup and it kept popping off, and he reached over without asking and pressed it down with a single firm click. The trick is to hold the cup steady first, he said. I've been making coffee for 15 years, she said. And yet. She laughed before she decided to. That was the first thing she noticed about him, that he made her laugh before she could think about whether to. His name was Daniel Asante. 32. He worked in nonprofit housing development, which meant he spent his days trying to build stable homes for families who couldn't afford the market, and his evenings either reading or at his church's men's group, which he spoke about with a directness she found unusual. Most men she'd met referenced their faith the way people reference the gym, vaguely, with a slight upward inflection, as proof of character rather than practice. Daniel talked about his faith like it was a relationship. Like it was real and ongoing and sometimes complicated. She paid attention to that. They exchanged information. He texted her that evening, not immediately, not after 3 calculated days, but that evening, which felt both honest and considered. He asked if she'd enjoyed the afternoon session. She said yes. He said he had a question about something the speaker said and would she want to talk through it sometime. She said yes. They took 4 months before he asked her formally to date him. Not because either of them was playing games, but because both of them had been burned before and both of them, though they didn't say it in these words yet, were afraid. Amara was afraid of wanting too much. She had spent a year learning not to need, and now here was someone making her want to need again, and she didn't know where to put that. Daniel was afraid of failing. His last relationship had ended 18 months ago, a woman named Priscilla, kind and good, who had wanted a commitment he kept finding reasons to delay until she stopped waiting. He carried that quietly. He did not wear it on his sleeve, but Amara was perceptive enough to feel the weight of it in the way he sometimes went careful when things got real. They were running now. That was the word for it. Running, not from each other, but together, towards something, at a pace that was faster than walking and required a different kind of breath. The first real fight happened over something that sounds small in the retelling, a dinner he cancelled at the last minute because a grant deadline moved. She had been ready for an hour. She'd made a reservation. She said it was fine and it was not fine. He called the next day. I know I hurt you. I want to understand how. That stopped her. Not because it was an apology, it wasn't one yet, but because it was a question. He wasn't defending or explaining. He was asking. I felt like the grant mattered more than I did, she said. She had practiced saying it in a way that didn't sound accusatory. It still felt vulnerable coming out. That's not how I see it, he said. But I understand why it felt that way. I should have called earlier. I should have given you time to make other plans. I'm sorry. It was not a perfect apology. It had a but near the beginning, which apology should probably not have. But it was real. It was him actually grappling with what he'd done rather than trying to get past it. She accepted it. Not because she was required to, but because she could feel him trying. The harder season came 8 months in. Daniel's nonprofit lost a significant piece of funding. His organization didn't fold, but it contracted. His role changed. His salary, which had not been comfortable to begin with, dropped by 18% while the cost of everything else stayed exactly the same. He was not a man who discussed money easily, not because he was ashamed, but because he had grown up watching his father carry financial stress alone, silently, until it calcified into distance. He didn't want to be that. But he also didn't know how to talk about it without feeling like he was failing. Amara sensed it before he told her. She could see it in the set of his shoulders when they went out, the way he checked his phone at dinner more than usual. She waited. She gave him room. She had learned, from therapy, from her mother, from painful experience, that pushing a man to open before he was ready often just made him close harder. He told her on a Sunday after church. They were sitting in his car in the parking lot because neither of them had started the engine. I don't think I can propose right now, he said. She had been expecting something. Not this. She kept her face still, not because she wasn't feeling anything, but because she knew this moment required steadiness from her even if she didn't entirely feel it. Tell me what's going on. He did. All of it. The funding, the salary, the anxiety he'd been managing at 3 a.m. when she thought he was sleeping. The fear that he was becoming his father. The deeper fear that wanting her as much as he did felt dangerous when everything felt so uncertain. She listened until he was done. Daniel, she said. I need you to hear me. She turned in the seat to face him. I didn't fall in love with your salary. And I'm not waiting for a proposal. I'm waiting for a partner. Those aren't the same thing. He looked at her for a long moment. I'm scared I'm going to let you down. You probably will, she said. And I'll probably let you down too. That's not what I'm worried about. What I'm worried about is whether we can tell each other the truth when it's hard. This, she gestured between them, at the car, at the parking lot, at the conversation itself, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I want. He took her hand. He didn't say anything for a moment. Outside the car, families were leaving church in clusters, children running ahead, parents calling after them. I want to pray, he said. Right now. Can we? She nodded. They prayed together in the parking lot until the lot was nearly empty. They prayed for the provision. For wisdom. For patience with each other and with themselves. Amara prayed out loud for the first time in front of him, really prayed, not the careful, composed version she'd offered before. She let him hear her be uncertain. They shall run and not grow weary. Weary did not mean pain-free. It did not mean things went smoothly or that the path was clear. It meant that even when the ground was uneven, you kept going. It meant that the strength to continue came from somewhere beyond your own effort, from waiting on the Lord, from opening your wings to something that was already moving. They almost ended twice in the months that followed. Once when an old friend of Amara's pulled her aside to say she'd heard things about Daniel that turned out to be a misunderstanding traced back to a complicated history she hadn't known about. Amara went to Daniel directly, against every instinct to overthink it first. He answered her honestly. They navigated it. Once more when fear simply descended on both of them at the same time, the way storms sometimes arrive without warning, and they spent a week being short with each other and kind with everyone else until Yutun sat Amara down and said, "You are fighting the relationship instead of fighting for it. Those are different." They chose it. Every time, they chose it. They married on a clear October afternoon, 3 years after the coffee station. The ceremony was small by both their family's standards and large by their budget. Amara walked down the aisle to a song she and Daniel had argued about, gently. For 2 months, she had wanted something quieter, he had wanted something with more gospel swing, and they had landed on something that was both, which felt appropriate. She did not cry at the altar. She had cried enough in preparation, cried at the dress fitting, cried when her father prayed over her the morning of, cried once inexplicably at a gas station 3 weeks before the wedding while buying a bottle of water. By the time she reached Daniel, she was calm. She was fully present. She looked at him and thought, simply, "There you are. I've been becoming ready for you." He cried. Just a little. He would insist later that it was allergies. No one believed him. Everyone loved him for it. The first year of marriage was not what either of them had imagined, which is to say it was exactly what marriage always is, a revelation. Not the bad kind, though there were hard moments, but the kind where you discover that the person you fell in love with is larger and more complex than the person you dated. Daniel turned out to be extraordinarily stubborn about the temperature of the apartment. Amara turned out to have a relationship with clutter that Daniel had not fully prepared for. These are not the things people put in wedding toasts. But there were also deeper discoveries. Amara found that Daniel, who seemed so steady from the outside, needed a specific kind of reassurance that she had to learn to give, not praise, exactly, but presence. He needed to know she was not going anywhere. She made it a practice to say it when he hadn't asked, "I'm here. We're good." It cost her very little. It meant everything to him. Daniel found that Amara's silence was not cold, it was the way she processed, the way she gathered herself before she could speak from a real place rather than a reactive one. He learned to wait. He had always been a man who moved quickly, resolved quickly, wanted resolution before bed. He learned that some conversations needed to sleep before they could be finished. He did not like learning this. He learned it anyway. The harder things arrived in the second year. The finances were tighter than they had expected. Daniel's organization stabilized, but the salary increase he had anticipated did not come on the timeline they had planned around. Amara picked up a consulting project on the side, which meant her evenings, the evenings she had imagined spending with her husband, cooking together, watching something, being easy together, were often spent at her desk with her laptop and a cooling cup of tea. They were tired. Not of each other, exactly, but alongside each other, and sometimes the distinction got blurry. There was an argument in March that had nothing to do with what it was about. The presenting issue was the car, a repair cost that arrived without warning, a decision about whether to pull from savings or charge it, a disagreement that escalated until Amara left the room and Daniel sat at the kitchen table staring at the wall. Later, they would identify that the argument was actually about fear. About the feeling that they were working so hard and still didn't have enough. About the unnamed pressure of trying to build something stable in a world that did not make stability easy. They didn't resolve it that night. They resolved it 3 days later, slowly, in pieces, while doing other things, while cooking, while driving, while lying in bed in the dark talking in the quiet way that is only possible when the lights are off and the phone screens are face down. "I don't want us to become roommates who share goals," Amara said one of those nights. "We're not," Daniel said. "I know we're not. I'm saying I don't want to." "Then we won't." He turned to face her in the dark. "But we have to choose it. Every day. That's what nobody tells you before you get married. It's a daily choice." She thought about that for a long time. "You're right. I think I expected it to get easier. Like the choosing would become automatic. Maybe it does. Maybe we're just not there yet. Maybe." They lay in the quiet for a while. "I'm glad I chose you," she said. "I'm glad I'm choosable," he said. She laughed. "The real kind, the genuine kind, the kind that travels up from somewhere deep and unexpected and sounds nothing like the polished laugh she used at work. He loved that laugh. He tried to earn it regularly. There were still mornings she sat with her Bible and felt the weight of the life they were building, the slow weight of it, not heavy like a burden, but like something solid. Real. There were still prayers that felt like climbing. She would begin with her agenda and somewhere in the middle realize she had released it and was simply present with God, asking for nothing, receiving something she couldn't name. There were evenings Daniel came home deflated and she didn't try to fix it. She had learned the difference between the kind of deflation that needed her to speak and the kind that needed her to simply be in the room. She made tea. She sat nearby. She let the evening hold him the way evenings can if you let them. They were still waiting, even in marriage. Waiting for a particular stability. Waiting, quietly and without pressure between them, to see if a child would come. Waiting to see if Daniel's organization would be able to grow again, if Amara's consulting would become something larger, if the apartment would stop feeling slightly too small. They shall walk and not faint. Walking is the pace of the long haul. Eagles mount up, dramatic, visible, high. Running happens in seasons of momentum, a forward movement you can feel. But walking is the daily faithfulness. The choosing. The ordinary Tuesday when nothing is transcendent and everything still needs to be done and you do it anyway, together, without fanfare, and you go to sleep and you get up and you do it again. Walking is not a lesser thing. It is the thing. On their 3rd anniversary, they went back to the restaurant where they'd had their first real date, not the coffee station conference, but the dinner a month after, where they had stayed 3 hours past the check and talked about everything and nothing, and Amara had driven home knowing something had shifted. The restaurant had changed management. The menu was different. Their table, the corner one they had specifically requested, was taken when they arrived. They ended up at a table near the kitchen that was slightly too loud. It was, somehow, perfect. They ordered too much food. They talked about the year. The hard parts first. They had learned to name the hard things before the good things, because the good things felt more solid when they weren't being used to cover anything. They talked about the car argument and laughed at it now. They talked about the months of financial anxiety and what they'd learned from it. They talked about the baby they had been quietly hoping for in the doctor's appointment that had said wait and trust, and what it meant to wait and trust when you were already tired of both. Then they talked about the good things. Amara talked about what it felt like to wake up every day and have her person there. She had imagined companionship in the abstract for years, had prayed for it and longed for it, but she had not fully imagined this, the specific warmth of a person who knows you, not in the general way, but in the particular. Who knows that you need 10 minutes of quiet before you can be social on a weekend morning. Who brings you coffee before you ask because he has been paying attention for 3 years. Who argues with you honestly and stays in the room. Daniel talked about watching her. He was not a man who expressed this kind of thing easily, which made it more significant when he did. I watch you and I think, she didn't get here by accident. She went through something to become who she is. And I'm the one who gets to be with who she became. She looked at him across the slightly too loud table near the kitchen. I wrote in my journal the night before I met you, she said. I wrote, Lord, I don't know how much longer I can hold this hope. But I'm going to hold it anyway. And here you are, she said. You're the answer to the prayer I almost stopped praying. He reached across the table and took her hand. He didn't say anything for a moment. That was one of the things she had learned to love about him. He knew when a moment needed to be held rather than spoken into. If you are in the waiting, in the season of singleness, sitting with a longing that will not quiet, attending weddings and praying in the dark and wondering if God has misplaced your file, hear this. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not too much or too little or somehow exempt from what God does for everyone else. You are in the part of the story where the eagles don't flap. Where they spread wide and trust the current. Where the becoming happens below the surface, unseen, unhurried, and deeply intentional. If you are running, in a relationship that is real and imperfect and requiring more of you than you expected, hear this. Weariness is not failure. It is evidence of effort. Keep running, not by grinding harder, but by waiting together. By praying when you want to argue. By choosing the person across from you again and again, especially on the days when it is not romantic. If you are walking in a marriage that is quieter than you imagined and harder than you prepared for, hear this. Walking is not a lesser season. It is the long faithfulness. The endurance that looks like Tuesday dinners and forgiveness that isn't dramatic and showing up when you don't feel like it. This is what love looks like when it has been tested and chosen to stay. This is not boring. This is the deepest thing. Waiting is not punishment. It is preparation. And every season requires a different kind of strength. The strength to be still. The strength to run. The strength to keep walking. All of it is given. All of it is grace. And you are already in the middle of your story, being made strong enough to carry what is coming. Trust the process. Trust the Lord. And know that wings are formed in seasons no one can see. You made it to the end. If this story moved you, challenged you, or said something you needed to hear, don't keep it to yourself. Send it to the friend who is tired of waiting. Share it with the woman in a relationship that is testing her patience. Give it to the wife who needs to be reminded that walking is not failing. Every season of your story matters. Like, subscribe and comment.